Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have a whole discussion about a question. Imagine that, a long-form broadcast, video, all relating to a question. The question is, are we a democracy? The answer is a 100% resounding absolutely not. Are we a democracy? Again, 100% absolutely not. What generated this question? I went to the Braver Angels conference, as you all know, and we've got a series of broadcasts related to our time at the event. The event was incredible. Wonderful people, food, festivities, faith, education, relationships, fun. It was delightful. It really helped me understand the value of Braver Angels, what they want to accomplish and why, and how they accomplish what they do. It was really something to behold, folks. I got to give them a massive shout-out credit. However, we talked to a gentleman there, and we brought up this fact that in the films they are creating, in their conversations, everywhere they talk about our democracy, through democracy, because of democracy, using democracy, to where it makes you crazy a little bit. Why? Because we're not a democracy. That's why. And so we had a great discussion, myself, my producer, Zach Gillis, or I should say one of my producers, Michael and Liz, and several people take care of business. But anyway, we had this great conversation with this guy, and it was a very peaceful, kind conversation. He asked questions. We provided answers. And at the end of the discussion, because we ran out of time, he kind of still didn't get it. You know, we made our points, and he said, I agree with those points. But at the end of the day, he kind of wanted to hold on to that democracy idea, wanted to hold on to, can't we just use the word democracy even though we mean something different? And the answer is, you can. People do it all the time. But is it right? No. Does it miseducate? Absolutely. And to me, that is the quintessential point. If you use the word democracy in a broader, a general, how we participate sense, you miss the greater conversation. You miss the details that separate those who are educated from those who are not. Now, I'm not saying anybody who uses the word democracy is uneducated. They may have a degree. They may be highly educated. But they miss the nuances that our founding fathers were keen to, 1, research, 2, highlight, and 3, reject. The founding fathers considered a variety of systems. They thought about them. They prayed about them. They pondered them. They debated them. And lo and behold, at the end of the day, they rejected all of them. That's right. You say, well, what do you mean? How do they reject all of them, Sam? We've got a government, don't we? They could not have rejected all of them. They can, and they did. But what they did was they kept pieces of many types of governments. And they blended them together in a unique, what they called, grand experiment. Why was it a grand experiment? Because this type of government had never been tried before. Yeah, and it had many different hallmarks, if you will, or signs that related to its, quote, uniqueness. Many different elements that related to why is it different? How is it different? What makes it different? What makes it so unique that it would be considered an experiment, not a, quote, repeat of history? The answer, a republic, if you can keep it. Well, Sam, there's republics all around the world. That's right, but they are not constitutional republics. And you've got to understand, not only is it a constitutional republic, but it's a constitutional republic based on the United States Constitution, which is unique among all governments through the history of the world. There is nothing like it. Oh, there's elements of it. There's pieces of the pie. That's right. There's pieces of the car, if you will, or pieces of the engine. But you know, when you take apart an engine and then you get done and you clean it all up and you get it all ready and you put it all back together, if there's missing pieces, might not run. Even if it runs, it might not run efficiently or properly. It's kind of like taking apart an engine and then putting that engine back together again. You've got to get all the pieces in the right spots, adjusted properly, doing the right things. That's how our founders built our constitutional republic. So anyway, this gentleman is a wonderful guy. I don't mean in any way to suggest he's negative, but you know what? He will admit he asked us a lot of questions and he said, I don't know enough about this. So my goal isn't to run around and say he's not educated. He's very intelligent, very incredibly smart, capable. I mean, he's a filmmaker, for crying out loud. The guy's brilliant. But at the same time, he never got taught this in government school. Neither did I. However, I had some tutors, some mentors, some people who helped me understand and put this together. And then what did I do? I didn't want to just listen to the teachers, the mentors. I wanted to vet what they had to say. I wanted to research it till the cows come home. I wanted to study it. I wanted to pray about it. I wanted to do what the founders did to come up with it, to familiarize myself with it. And that's why, you know, I know quite a bit about it. I've been working on it for 30 plus years now, ladies and gentlemen. I actually worked on it a little bit before. It just was not really intentional. It was because of my religion. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to which I'm a member, we believe the Constitution is a sacred document. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Ten Commandments, they're all guidelines to a civilized, moral society. They're all guidelines to create a framework to allow religious liberty to flourish. And without those milestones, those guidelines, that framework, we couldn't have the religious liberties we have today. So understand that to me, the Constitution is sacred. In fact, it should be the political religion of our nation, if you will, or the moral compass for our nation might be a better way to say it. America, ladies and gentlemen, is a constitutional republic. It is not. I repeat, it is not. I repeat again, it is not a democracy. Now I'm going to proceed to lay out the framework so you understand how I got there. I was going to put together 15 principles as I started out my study session to prepare for this show. The problem is I came up with 25, not 15. Because it's so overwhelming when you study the founders. They rejected every form of government, including democracy. Oh, they kept pieces of many governments, but they uniquely created checks and balances to temper every element that could go awry. And they put together what they called the grand experiment. 250 years later, ladies and gentlemen, this year, we have the ability to look back at all the governments of the world, historically speaking. Look back at the United States and our founding fathers and their unique government, which had never been tried before. And we can look back and see how successful it was or is. And we have a role, ladies and gentlemen, a grand role in determining what it will look like over the next 250 years. Sons and daughters of the Republic, you have a sacred role to play. And I hope that I play my part on the stage of history as the founders did, with a desire for the sacred cause of liberty, understanding that the mother of all liberties is that of agency, my ability to choose as I think best. And yes, that means suffering the consequences of the choices I make, if I make godly choices, if I make choices that promote the God-ordained traditional family, if I make choices that preserve our unique, blessed form of government, then wonderful are the consequences. On the other hand, if I turn my back on it, if I don't obey the commandments of God, if I don't have fidelity to family and country, then I lose the prize, ladies and gentlemen. That's the reality. When we get back, I'm going to dig into kind of the expose that I put together here on this. You can see my pros. You can think of cons. I'd love to debate this anytime, anywhere with anybody. How's that? I'm Sam Bushman. This is the one and only Liberty Roundtable Live. Are we a constitutional republic? Yes, indeed we are, and I'm here to prove it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Sam Bushman. America, ladies and gentlemen, is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Let's go. I put together kind of some bullet points that might help you understand the reality. It's about education. It's about understanding the Founding Fathers. It's about why they rejected it, right? The United States, folks, was founded as a constitutional republic, while democratic principles such as voting, elections, and representation are part of our system. The founders deliberately rejected democracy or pure democracy as our form of government. They understood that an unchecked majority could become just as dangerous as a monarchy. No king, no majority rule. Got it? America's system, ladies and gentlemen, is built on the principle that individual rights come from God Almighty and not from government, and therefore cannot be taken away by any temporary political majority. Think about that. The Constitution was designed to limit government, to limit power, to protect liberty, and prevent those who, just have whatever they want to think at the moment, in other words, the passions of the moment, from overwhelming justice and God-given individual rights. Think about that. Everything in the United States government, the unique blend is to temper the few from overwhelming the many, or the simple majority from overwhelming the moral imperative. Critical terms I'm using. You might have to study some of them to get caught up. What is the moral imperative? It is that God's law is the ultimate law. God's law is sovereign. We, as his sons and daughters, have been given a measure of sovereignty under God's law. Government was created by we, the people. And government can only receive authority we give it. That would be authority that we have, right? We can't give authority we don't have. So therefore, God's the ultimate sovereign. We as his sons and daughters have been given inalienable rights, and we can delegate government to exist and serve us, never own us. And we can't give government authority we don't possess. When asked what kind of government the Constitutional Convention gave us, or had created, if you will, Benjamin Franklin famously replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." He did not say a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. He said a republic. That was intentional. And the question was critical. What kind of government do we have? Likewise, ladies and gentlemen, the Pledge of Allegiance declares loyalty to the republic for which it stands, not democracy. Today, ladies and gentlemen, sadly, many Americans use the word democracy loosely to try to mean self-government, free elections, or representative government, but it does none of those things. Because self-government isn't no democracy. Self-government means you have to have fidelity to God, for he's the author of our laws. There's no democracy about it. One person, fidelity to their maker, to their creator, right? The created giving honor to the creator. There's no democracy about it. Free elections, well, we elect representatives, right? So yes, we have democratic principles. We go and vote, right? But we don't just have majority win in votes, do we? Well, kind of. We have a blend of a variety of ways that votes get counted. I can go on, but the Electoral College is an example, right? Representative government means that I elect someone who then takes votes on my behalf, a step away from we the people and a majority and a democracy, right? However, if we wish to be historically accurate and constitutionally accurate, the United States is properly described as a constitutional republic with some democratic features, not a democracy itself, certainly not a, quote, pure democracy. The distinction matters because words shape how people understand government. Let me say that again. That's worth repeating. The distinction matters because words shape how people understand government and their role in that government. If America is viewed primarily as a democracy, then many begin to believe that whatever 51% of voters want, they get or should become law. If America is understood as a constitutional republic, then it becomes clear that even majorities are limited by the Constitution, the checks and balances, and ultimately by the God-given rights of every individual. Did you hear me? God-given rights given to every individual, not the majority rules. See, that's the uniqueness. We look to God or a higher source than government for our unique form of government. That was not done before, unless it was like a king. But then you had a monarch, and then you kind of blend a monarch and a theocracy. If you look at King David, and well, David had to appeal to God, and now you've got God as the theocracy state, and you've got David as kind of the king. You've got this monarch theocracy thing going on. The founders believed that liberty required more than elections. Liberty required constitutional restraint, separation of powers, federalism, checks and balances, and the protection of individual rights from both kings and majorities. They intentionally understood this reality. Go read their writings for greater context. Start with the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers if you want to get kind of an idea, and then look at their individual letters to one another to understand. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, referring to our form of government as a constitutional republic, that is why preserving the republic remains one of the most important responsibilities of our generation. It's critical, ladies and gentlemen. It's vital. It's not just for fun. It's not just happenstance. It's not just casual. We can say and think and believe what we want. We must get this right, because the whole understanding of what we try to preserve depends on that. You know, I have Dr. Bradley on with me every Friday, and he wrote a collegiate series. It's a DVD lecture series, as well as a book. It's a book to read. It's a workbook. It's everything. It's the collegiate understanding. It's called To Preserve the Nation, because that's why preserving the republic remains one of the most important responsibilities of our generation, folks. So I put together 25 reasons. I started out trying to put 15 together, but I put together 25 reasons that we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Number one, the Pledge of Allegiance says republic, right? The republic for which it stands, they don't describe democracy at all. Number two, Benjamin Franklin, when asked about it, called it a republic. A republic, if you can keep it, he said. Number three, the Constitution never established a democracy and doesn't even use the word democracy. The Constitution declares or proclaims no provision declaring the United States to be a democracy. Never, nowhere. The Constitution does, however, guarantee a Republican form of government. And that doesn't mean the party. That's a private organization, not even government. The Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government. Article 4, Section 4 guarantees every state a Republican form of government. So even in that, if we want to run around and talk about a Republican or a republic all the time, you can. But democracy or Democrat? No. Number 5, the founders warned against pure democracy. Many founders viewed pure democracy as unstable and vulnerable to mob rule and majority tyranny. That's why when they talk about democracy, some people call it demon crazy. Because you get the majority rule and the majority just decides they can vote themselves largesse from the treasury. They think they can just, if there's one sheep and 3 wolves, there's 4 of them. Well, the 3 wolves decide the sheep is for dinner, and that's the way it is. See, it becomes mob rule. It becomes tyranny majority. The founders understood this. Number 6, rights. God-given inalienable rights are not subject to majority vote. The Bill of Rights protects fundamental liberties even when they're unpopular. That's vital to understand, folks. 7, the Constitution limits government power. Government officials are bound by constitutional restraints, regardless of public opinion. That's critical, folks. And they swear an oath to the Constitution, not to a democracy. I've got a whole lot more as this broadcast continues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sam Bushman, and it's all about education. It's all about gaining an understanding and then standing tall for what we've learned. I'm Sam Bushman. Spread the word, share the love. We're everywhere. God save our constitutional republic. America, ladies and gentlemen, is indeed a constitutional republic. Okay, we're not just a republic. We're not a democracy. And, the reason I spend so much time on this again is because the people believe that we're a democracy as a form of government, that eventually they believe that, 51% should rule. And they believe that, what the people want to decide, let them. They should be able to decide whatever they want to. And the founders warned us against this and said, you're going to have the tyranny of the majority if you do that. The tyranny of the majority, which means, hey, if they vote for something wicked or wrong, then it goes south. All right, so I put together 25 realities proving that we're not a democracy, and we never have been. And the founding fathers repeatedly warned against a pure democracy. Do we have democratic principles? Yes, we vote. Yes, we can have public opinion. There's a lot of things we can do to influence, but we are not a democracy. And we need to stop thinking or saying that we are, because it really leads us down the wrong road. We're becoming more democracy-like every day as we dismantle the proper role of constitutional government based on Republican principles. I don't mean Republican as a party. We'll get into that. But I'm talking about 25 principles proving we're not a democracy. I'm on number 8. Separation of powers, ladies and gentlemen, prevents majority domination. Prevents majority domination. Legislative executive, and judicial powers are divided to prevent any single group from gaining unchecked control. Now, understand we have those three branches of government, right? That's a vertical. I'm sorry, that's a horizontal division of power across, right? But we have vertical too. We have states and the general government, another separation. Counties and states, another separation. And even at the local levels, you've got a governor, executive branch. You've got a state legislative body, and you've got state courts or judiciary, right? So we have separation of powers vertically and horizontally in America, all designed to make sure no one gains the majority. Interesting, right? Number 9, federalism distributes power. Power is divided between the national government and the states, preventing excessive centralization. We don't want centralization, right? Number 10, we have the Electoral College. It reflects Republican principles. The president is elected through a constitutional process rather than a simple national popular vote. That's why even though the majority can win, but if the Electoral College offsets that, the president could lose, or the candidate for president could lose. That's by design. Everywhere in our system has these checks and balances. So even if you commit election fraud by a little bit through, making somebody win the majority of the vote, they could still lose. Everything in our society, in America, based on our constitutional republic form of government, is designed as a check, a balance, a protection, right? Why? We don't want tyranny of any kind. We don't want the majority to decide things by their masses, and we don't want minorities to pull the lever of government in the favor of the few at the expense of the many either. 11, the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, whether you know this or not, was originally indirectly elected. That's right, indirectly elected. Now it's directly elected because we're dismantling our constitutional republic because we believe we have a democracy when we don't. Senators were originally chosen by state legislatures, further insulating government from temporary political passions. So the people could vote for the House of Representatives members. The states could vote for the Senate members. The people could vote for president, but yet the Electoral College could offset that. See the checks and balances everywhere? And we've started to dismantle these things. And why? Because we use the wrong language and we don't know, and we think a majority rules, that's fine. No, that's not fine, nor is it good, nor was it the intent of the Founding Fathers at all. I got to bring it back. I got to make sure you know, and I got to hope you stand with me to preserve what we hold so dear. 12, the rule of law governs America, ladies and gentlemen. The Constitution, the supreme law of the land, not public opinion, not polls, remain the supreme law of the land. It's the Constitution. That's why we're a constitutional republic. A republic is checks and balances. A constitution lays out how those checks and balances overlay one another and how they work. Delegating authority to different groups. Hey, president, here's your authority. Here's your list, buddy. It's very narrow. You have a lot of power within that narrow scope, but don't go outside of it, sir. Because if you do, we've got the Congress that'll rein you in. Well, they're supposed to. Get it done, Congress. And the courts that'll rein you in. Get it done, courts. If Congress gets out of control, hey, the courts and the president will rein Congress in. If the courts get out of control, Congress and the president will rein them in. If the general government gets out of control, the states will rein it in. Do you see these checks and balances everywhere? It's critical to understand. Number 13, the Declaration of Independence focuses on rights. Rights that were violated by a thug king. That's why the Declaration of Independence rejected that form of government, highlighted that we have unalienable rights that came from God. You don't believe me? Read the end of the Declaration of Independence. It clearly refers to a higher power than government, that's for sure. The Declaration clearly teaches that rights come from our Creator, and that's not government. We created government. Government's the creation of we the people. We are the creation of God Almighty. Rights come from our Creator, folks, and governments simply exist to guarantee, to preserve, to secure those rights. Got it? Good. Number 14, public officials swear to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. Elected officials take an oath to uphold the Constitution, not democracy, not to follow public opinion or majority opinion at all. 15, America uses democratic methods within a, quote, Republican system. That's a fact. So if you want to say we're a constitutional, democratic, Republican, constitutional, okay, fine. That's what I mean. We borrow a lot of these elements from many different governments. Voting and elections and representation, well, you could say those are democratic principles. Voting is, election kind of is. Representations are more Republican form of government than they are Democratic form of government. But no matter what, we're under a constitutional supreme law of the land framework, right? Yes, these points actually strengthen my argument, folks. Listen, the American system was deliberately designed to slow down, restrain, filter, and limit simple majority rule. The founders repeatedly tried to do everything they could to slow it down, to prevent one group, no matter how big or how small, from gaining the system. Additional evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that we were not designed as a pure democracy in any way. Constitutional amendments, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to change the Constitution, in other words, they require, quote, super majorities, not just majorities, super majorities. Why? Because they wanted the bar to be set so high to prevent majority tyranny or tyranny majority. The Constitution cannot be amended by a simple majority vote. An amendment requires, listen carefully, 2/3 of approval in both houses of Congress, so the House and the Senate, or a convention that would be called by 2/3 of the states. And then after all those 2/3, it requires 3/4 of the states to ratify it. It's super hard to get an amendment passed. Intentionally so. The founders intentionally made constitutional change difficult. Why? Because fundamental rights and governmental structure should not, I repeat, should not be altered by temporary majorities. Most major government action requires more than a basic majority. Throughout the Constitution, many important actions require super majorities rather than simple majority for that very reason. I'll talk about examples in seconds. I'm Sam Bushman. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my 25 different points plus my commentary to prove we're a constitutional republic. Not, I repeat, not a democracy. Run number 17, ladies and gentlemen. Spread this broadcast far and wide, would you please? It is fundamental understanding we're after here. It's education to make sure that we don't lose what we've got. And if we think and run around and talk about and democracy, eventually we will lose this greater point the founders made. You have a republic if you can keep it. Number 17, most major government actions require supermajorities, not just majorities. Yeah. Examples include, as I mentioned, constitutional amendments. If you want to change the government, you got to have way supermajorities. 2/3, 2/3, 2/3, 3/4, that kind of stuff. Treaty ratification, high bar. Conviction impeachment trials, high bar. Overriding presidential vetoes, high bar. Expelling members of Congress, super high bar. The founders repeatedly chose consensus over simple majority rule. They wanted everybody to be aboard to the best they could. You couldn't have 100% because if someone's sick, it won't work. So you got to make the bar as high as you can, but be realistic. 18, the states serve as an additional check. The states are not administrative districts of Washington, D.C. No, they are sovereign political entities within our general federal system. Many constitutional actions require state vote, state participation, state majorities, ensuring that, hey, nobody gets out of control, that the national doesn't run away from it all and control the entire system. You're going to have the states, separate constitutional republics in and of themselves. The United States is nothing more than a group of states that are sovereign, that are constitutional republics in their own right, overlaid by agreement to be part of the more perfect union. Do you see how this isn't God directly leading the country, but it's as close as we can get with God's hand on our founding fathers? 19, the Electoral College rejects pure national majority rule. The president is not elected by simple majority or nationwide popular vote. The Electoral College requires candidates to build support across states and regions rather than just relying on massive population centers that could give majority rule democracy. They didn't want that. 20, the Senate was intentionally designed to temper, quote, popular passions. The House of Representatives reflects the people more directly. The Senate was created to be a stabilizing institution that would slow down sudden political movements. They wanted to protect long-term interest, stabilize. That's why each state had a legislative body that was supposed to pick the senators. The founders intentionally created two chambers with different structures to prevent hasty action. 21, jury verdicts often require more than a simple majority as well. In criminal cases, juries generally are required to reach unanimous verdicts before convicting anyone. The government cannot take a person's liberty simply because 51% of jurors think he's guilty. No, the standard reflects a core American constitutional principle. Protecting liberty is more important than achieving a simple majority agreement. 22, due process limits majority power as well. Even overwhelming public support cannot legally deprive a person or an individual of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Doesn't matter what the majority thinks. Constitutional protections stand above popular opinion, ladies and gentlemen. 23, the Bill of Rights is a list of things that the majority cannot do. The First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Ninth, 10th, they're all restrictions on government power. That's what the Bill of Rights is all about. The founders just felt like, man, we cannot leave it the way it is because it might run away. We got to restrict more. So the Constitution grants limited authority. The Bill of Rights says, yeah, you got limited authority, all right, and you got power there, but keep your hands off the rest of this, baby. If it isn't listed, can't do it. Go look at your 10th Amendment, right? We don't want majorities violating fundamental rights. That's the clear, resounding reality. Number 24, checks and balances intentionally slow down government and prevent the majority. The founders believed that government should move carefully, not quickly. A bill may need approval from the House, the Senate, the President, and it may still then be reviewed by the courts. This is the opposite. 100% against, or 180 degrees opposite of pure majority rule. Do you see how everything points against a pure democracy? Number 25, the entire structure reflects distrust of concentrated power. The Constitution divides power between federal and state governments, between the three branches of government, all the way from the top to the bottom, county to the general government, between two different chambers of Congress, between the people and those who represent them. The result is a system designed to prevent any single majority from exercising unlimited authority. Let me say that again. The result is a system designed to prevent any single majority or democracy from exercising unlimited authority. If America were truly a democracy, folks, then 51% would decide nearly everything. But in America, 51% cannot, I repeat, cannot amend the Constitution, ratify a treaty, override a veto, convict in an impeachment trial, or convict in the courts of our land, take away rights. The founders repeatedly required super majorities for those things, many times cascading or overlapping. Supermajority. Their goal was to protect individual rights, which is a characteristic of a constitutional republic, not a democracy. The Constitution is full of barriers against, quote, simple majority rule. That's because the founders were building a constitutional republic to protect liberty and God-given rights. Constitutional republic versus democracy. Listen up. Constitutional republic. Constitution is the supreme law. Rights are protected from government infringement. Representatives govern, but under constitutional limits based on God's law. Checks and balances restrain power. Federalism divides authority. Minority rights are protected. Government is limited by the rule of law. Liberty is preserved through constitutional safeguards. Here's a pure democracy. You ready? Majority opinion is supreme. Right or wrong? Don't care. Rights may be altered by majority vote. Public passions can drive policy. Right? Few barriers exist to prevent majority power. Minority rights might be in danger. Government authority expands according to popular demand. Stability depends largely on, quote, public sentiment. Liberty can be sacrificed on the altar of temporary majorities. Why does this distinction matter so much, folks? Because the central question is simple. Is the purpose of government to do whatever the majority wants? Or is the purpose of government to protect God-given rights that no majority has the authority to violate, huh? The founders chose the second path intentionally. America was designed so that liberty, religious liberty particularly, would not depend on elections alone. It was designed so that liberty would endure even when elections produce, quote, unwise outcomes, right? The Constitution stands against the majority, stands against tyranny, stands against public passions and whims. For that reason, ladies and gentlemen, many Americans believe we should proudly and accurately describe ourselves and our nation as what it was intended and founded to be, a constitutional republic. Yeah, there's democratic processes, but not a democracy, a constitutional republic. As Franklin reminded us, the challenge has never been creating the republic. The challenge is keeping it. And you can only keep a republic if you understand what it is. And if you call it a democracy, you can say, oh, Sam, we don't mean any harm. We mean, well, you know what we mean, don't you, Sam? No, I really don't. And the reason that I don't is because words have power. Words have meaning. And over time, if you continue to refer to what we are not In fact, what our founding fathers warned us against, in fact, what our government is set up to be 180 degrees from, if you continue to use that word democracy, eventually, pardon the pun, but you will dumb down society to believe majority rules. And we are a democracy. And eventually they'll forget that we're a constitutional republic. They'll forget all the checks and balances. You don't believe me? Why did the 17th Amendment change senators from being elected by the state legislative bodies to now being popular elections, making us more of a democracy? I suggest we get rid of the 17th Amendment and go back to the senators being elected by the state legislative bodies, giving the states a seat at the table. Truth, ladies and gentlemen, is the key to the exercise. Education, and then standing tall for the sacred cause of liberty, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sam Bushman. You are watching the one and only hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use. We call it Liberty Roundtable Live, and it's everywhere. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America, the greatest country on the face of the earth.
But it's worth it when you try. Yeah, it's worth it when you try.